I'm going to show you how to get really familiar with the mark schemes really fast by making sure you're getting the most out of each past paper you practice by keeping track of your mistakes. So in every topic, even after studying a lot, there are points that naturally stick to you and there are points which you keep on forgetting. So like when you're doing past papers, at the end you check your answer against the mark scheme. You're going to find these points and you're going to be like, oh, why did I forget that? Oh, why did I miss that out on? It's so easy. Or even worse, you might say, I would have written this in the exam, but I just forgot it now. And you know what I'm talking about. Let's say there was a question asking me the reason the demand curve shifts in economics. And there are three main reasons, and you know two of them. But the third, you feel like it's in the back of your head. You know it, but you just can't remember it. But the moment you look at the mark scheme and you see the word substitute, bam, the price of substitute goods and consumers, and we'll choose and consider, and you can talk paragraphs about it. But you just needed a quick prompt, something to trigger your memory about the subject. And what most of us do when we see these points that we miss, we just say, oh, I forgot to mention that, I'll remember to do it next time. And that's it. But you can't expect a 10-second acknowledgement of what you forgot as you're seeing the mark scheme to do any real long-term help. You see, past papers show you what you missed, right? What are your weaknesses? And it's a waste to not keep track of these weaknesses. And these type of points are especially bad because we just think, oh, I know them, I just forgot to write them. So you don't spend a lot of time on them. If you find something you don't understand totally, that signals you that you need to spend a lot of time studying. But the points you remember sometimes, you don't remember, you sort of know and you just can't remember them every time. What a lot of us don't understand, and for the majority of IB for me, if you can't remember them now, you're not going to be able to remember them in your actual exam. So what you need is a really simple system to record and remember these points. And I'm going to show you a simple system that worked for me and helped me a lot for my exams. And then how to take that even further and maximize the value of past papers. And it's easy as heck. All you have to do is open a Google Docs file, not a Word file, a Docs file, because you can view a Docs file anywhere, your phone, your computer, your friend's computer, anywhere. And name that document Everything I Forget. And you can kind of guess, right, what you need to fill here. You write down all the points that you missed out on. So like the economics example, I already knew the first two. I'll look back at the mark scheme and only write the one I didn't mention. Price of substitute goods, not the other two I remembered. And you're going to do this for every single past paper question where you looked at the mark scheme and there were points you didn't mention in your answer. Points you forgot, points you weren't very clear on, everything you didn't write. And over time, you're going to have a list of things that you commonly forget. You're literally taking note of all the points you miss out on during actual past exams that IB students did and recording them to improve on them later. Now, whatever way you want to remember this doc file, that's up to you. Memorizing, reading it a lot, quizleting it, whatever it is. The point is, keep track of your mistakes. You're not going to remember the points you missed out on 5 past papers ago. You have to keep track of them so you remember it for your actual exam. So that's the main method and that's already great. But there's a way to take this even further and make the whole marking scheme ingrained in your head. And this is going to improve your marks crazily fast. IB mark schemes have this feature of including more correct points or points of discussion than number of marks required. And this is really true for broader questions. And you'll see in this image here where this physics paper says that they add more marks than needed. And this is because students might not necessarily use the same points for a question. So a question like, state one reason the internet helped businesses, one student could say it made things easily accessible, and the other one could say it lowered costs for businesses. And both would get the mark as long as those 2 points were in the mark scheme. So like in biology, for an 8-mark question, there are possibly 10 or even 13 marks in the mark scheme. Now here's something that you can do that can really make sure you're learning as much as possible. And this can really bring you close to that 7. Even if you get full marks, even if you got the question totally correct, still, the points that were in the mark scheme, but you didn't mention in your answer, put them in the doc file. Now this seems stupid because you got full marks. Why am I still writing things down? But think about it. You're doing all these past papers. You're practicing the entire syllabus. And the fact that there were points you didn't write that were in the mark scheme, that means they're in the syllabus. And that means they're testable. And it's a very real possibility that in a future IB exam, maybe even your exam, you get a question that is more specific and more geared towards the points that you didn't write. Now it's different if you knew 5 points but the question only asked for 2, so you only wrote 2. But if it asked for more, you would have written the points that were in the mark scheme. That's different. I'm talking about making sure you remember every possible answer for an IB question. Let's take this side question. You're only supposed to develop 2 of these points in depth, so maybe you did these ones that I ticked off. But sometimes you look at the mark scheme and you'll think to yourself, oh, I forgot about stress inoculation training. Maybe it would have been better to develop this. Oh, I didn't think about social programs for youth such as Head Start or the Big Brothers. Because you didn't write all these 3 points, add those 3 points to the doc file. And if in the future a question comes out that would be more appropriately answered by stress inoculation training, by programs to develop psychological strengths like anger management, because you studied from your doc file, these points are going to be there at your fingertips. Here's the thing. When we do questions in exam conditions, we can't waste extra time writing more points than the question requires. So this is what you could do. After you're done with practicing the whole paper and finishing it in exam conditions, right? If you only had 1.5 hours after you're done answering the whole paper, finishing it in 1 hour 20 minutes, answering it as per the marks given. After you're done, before you open your marking scheme, go back to the questions and quickly outline the points you would have wanted to develop if it was a higher mark question. So okay, for this question, even if it only asked me to do 2 strategies, let me answer it for 5 strategies, and hopefully you got these points. And so you list out every single possible answer to that question if it was for a higher mark. So basically, even if a question is worth only 4 marks, you're, in a minimalistic way, answering it for more marks and outlining all the possible answers to the question that you know. And then only after that, check with your MS, and then you get a real picture of the ones which you got and the ones that you didn't. And the ones that you didn't, put it in the doc file. So you do the test in exam conditions first, and then go back and add it to the answers, and then at the end, check your MS. So what you're doing here is you're answering a question more than it's required to do so. This is because even though a question only tells you to answer it for 4 marks, you list out points that would develop it into a 7-mark question. And that's really powerful because this added effort directly translates to you learning specific material that gets you marks. You're learning directly from the mark scheme. You're learning the exact points that IB wants you to use. You're covering all potential answers to actual IB questions, and you're testing out your knowledge from all different angles. Because by spitting out all the knowledge you have for a given topic and then testing to see if it's in the mark scheme, in a way, you're making sure that you remember the whole mark scheme, and you're not letting one potential answer of one past paper go to waste. Can you imagine writing your exam with all these mark schemes in your head, ready to go at your fingertips? That's gonna directly translate to you writing much more exam-oriented answers than you were before. And what if you keep on missing out the same thing over and over again? You keep on reading your doc file, you keep on trying these past papers, but you keep on missing points over and over again. Like for me, I kept on forgetting to say this one line. Transcription happens in the 5' to 3' direction. Every time I kept on forgetting it. But every time I forgot it, I put it again in the doc file. That means under the heading transcription, this line will appear more than once, right? Like this economics example. And it will appear as many times as you forgot to write them in your past paper practice. And what this does is it increases the frequency shown of things you keep on forgetting in the doc file. So later, when you read this file, you'll see, oh, I keep on forgetting this because it's listed so many times. And just that click is going to make it easier. It's going to signal you to remember this point in the future. Also, don't make this a notes file. Don't start explaining everything you missed and writing paragraphs to explain the things you got wrong. You can make a separate page for that. You can make a separate file. But this file should just be a quick and simple way to refresh the things you keep on missing out on. And the only reason I say this is that if the file gets really long and big and thorough, it's going to put you off from opening it in the future. And it's a known fact, what we perceive as huge and a lot of work we put off doing. But if the file just consists of 7 to 12 pages of short points that you keep on missing, it's easy to skim through and you're not going to put it off. So make this file simple and sweet, and more importantly, before every test that you do, every past paper that you practice, and even before your final exam, open this file, read it over and over again, and let it refresh you and prompt you of all the things you kept on missing. Make this file simple and sweet and go over it as frequently as you can, because it's not going to be hard to do. You're just skimming through the file and letting it refresh your memory on points that you already know. And more importantly, before every test that you do, before every past paper that you practice, and before your final exam, go through this file and let it refresh your memory on the points you forget. And trust me, with all these points ready at your fingertips, you're going to be so ready for any test that comes your way, because you've literally kept track of everything that has occurred in a marking scheme, keeping track of all your mistakes and refreshing those points constantly in your mind. And that level of readiness is going to be so crucial when you're writing your final exam. Okay, I really hope that helped. I did this for my bio test, and literally, I was so sure, because I kept on refreshing these points in my mind, I was so sure what I was writing was correct in my final exam because I was so familiar with the mark scheme. It was like practicing a past paper. It was like reading off a mark scheme while answering my section B. Studying the mark scheme is the best investment any IB student can make. You're literally learning the exact answers to a test, because IB repeats half the questions, before you step into an exam room. Okay, hope that helped. If you have any questions, DM me on Instagram at IBLikeCole. I have like 10 followers, and my goal is to get it to 15 now. Really, any questions, I respond to DMs much more quicker than email, or contact me at iblikeCole@gmail.com. Hope that helped. Hope it all works out. Take care.